In this discussion, we'll talk a little bit here about platelets. Just to let you know that the image up on the screen doesn't, well, it relates to platelets, but it actually doesn't have anything to do with the discussion. I actually don't have any diagrams that relate to the discussion, so I'll just kind of put this up here to basically hold a place. So let's talk a minute or two here about platelets. Fairly short discussion, but platelets are basically cell fragments, and if you recall when we talked about formed elements, I mentioned that they were cells and also cell fragments, and the reason that we had to include cell fragments in that discussion was that the platelets are not complete cells. Basically, they are bags of chemicals, and these chemicals are all involved in blood clotting. Now, you should also be familiar with the term thrombocyte. Thrombocyte refers back to the technical name for blood clotting, which is thrombosis. So it's kind of honestly a misnomer. The term, the suffix rather, cyte implies cell, but like I just told you a moment ago, these platelets truly aren't cells. They are cell fragments that are essentially involved in blood clotting / thrombosis. Now if we scroll back, give me a moment here. My computer's trying to freeze up. So we scroll back a little bit here and take a look at that chart that we saw earlier as far as the lineage of the formed elements. You can see that the platelets are derived from a larger cell that is called a megakaryocyte. You should keep that term in mind. The megakaryocyte found in red bone marrow will break up and form or yield these fragments that are called platelets. Now, platelets obviously are essential. They are involved once again in blood clotting. And if you remember that test that I mentioned to you earlier called a complete blood count, or CBC, that is one of the 4 standard values that we get when we receive a CBC. So understanding and noting that platelet count is obviously critical because it can obviously change in certain individuals. If a certain person has a low platelet count, it could indicate a number of things. It ultimately indicates maybe precedes the fact that these people have an easier time bleeding. In certain individuals, under certain conditions, people develop what we call a hypercoagulable state. It just means that their blood clots very easily, and you may see an increase in the number of platelets in that situation. Finally here, just want to say a quick word about the lifespan, how long these platelets last. If you recall, the red blood cells lasted about 120 days. Most of your white blood cells only last hours to a couple of days. And then here with the platelets, you're going to see them last about a little bit longer than your white blood cells on average, anywhere between 5 to 9 days. So again, a shorter period of time in which we'll see these platelets by comparison to the red blood cells. So that is pretty much it for the basics behind your platelets. Keep in mind that they are cell fragments involved in blood clotting or thrombosis. They are fragments of a larger cell called a megakaryocyte, and you should be pretty much well off if you do that. Now, in the next discussion, we'll bridge, I guess, into more of the actual functioning of those platelets as we discuss a topic called hemostasis. So that's where we're going to expand upon how they are actually involved in blood clotting.